Hey crafty friends, this is Chelsea. Welcome to today's video. You can see I already have a base laid out for my pages today because today we are going to be working with an enlarged photo. This is 8.5 by 11. I love using big photos on my travel layouts, but also this is part of the creative design team collaboration this week. So all week long, the ladies have been posting videos with tons of cool ideas for using large photos on your pages. I'm going to link the playlist at the end of this video, and I hope you will go watch them because there's some really cool ideas. This photo is from our trip to Mexico this past winter, and I'm using the Country Woods paper pack to go along with this. I've done one layout already from this trip, and I'll make sure to link that at the end of today's video so you can go watch that if you haven't seen it already. So I printed off some photos from this day. I believe this day was one of the first days we were there, and we made like over 10,000 steps because we were just going around, checking everything out, taking pictures, figuring out where everything was. It was a really fun day. And so I wanted to capture some of those snapshots. Now you can see this is the 4x6 version of this one. And the reason I printed this at 4x6 is because anytime I'm going to do an enlargement, I usually want to do a 4x6 first just to check, seeing if it needs to be brightened or anything like that. This takes way less ink. If I print a large one and then it's not right, I'll feel a lot worse about wasting that ink and that paper. So I like to do a 4x6 first and just check it out and make sure it's how I want it. Now, one of my favorite things about large photos is using the extra space. Now, depending on your photo, it might have extra space or it might not, but a lot of landscape photos do. I like using that extra space for my title, my journaling, and either putting it on my photo digitally before I print it or stamping on my photo afterwards. I'm actually going to show you both in today's video of how I do that. I'm going to start out first looking at the digital process of how I added my title, and then the stamping is going to come at the end because I need to have all my embellishments and stuff in place so that I know exactly where I need to stamp it. So I'm going to do my photo editing in Canva. I'm going to select an 8.5 by 11 canvas, and you could do this in other apps, but Canva, there is a free version, and I just find it pretty easy to work in. So you can either insert your picture by clicking it and it'll drop on, or you can drag it over and it'll kind of snap to your canvas and it'll make it the full size. Now here I did just drop it on so that I could size it and leave a white border. I wish I hadn't done that because when I went to go print it, it did not print the white border evenly. And I do have an option in my Photos app to select a white border, and next time I would do that. So here you can see I can adjust the photo and just kind of size it by dragging the little handles on the sides. I could make a very custom size photo that would print on an 8.5 by 11, and then I could cut it down with my paper trimmer after the fact. I could also put on multiple photos and create collages and print them out this way too. Now, if you go to position, you can type in the exact measurements that you want your photo to be. So I wanted to make sure I had an even border around the edge, so I'm going to do 8 by 10.5, and that gives me a nice 1/4 inch border on all sides. Once I have it the right size, I can just move it around and adjust it using those red lines to help me center it perfectly. Next, I want to add my title, so I'm going to go and add a text box. And first off, I'm just going to increase the size so I can see what I'm doing and what the text even looks like. And then I can go in and play with the different fonts and decide what I want. I think I want something scripty, so I'm going to click on the font area and then I'm going to select handwriting, so it will show me all the handwriting fonts. And then I just start clicking on samples that I think I kind of like. And it's always a good idea to move it up to where you can see it. I like that this shows in white. You can also change the color right up there at the top. But I like white. I think it's going to stand out perfectly against that blue sky. Now remember, I do have this other kind of empty area on my photo. I could add my title there, or I could also add journaling there. Those are the two things that I do like to add on my photos sometimes. So I'm going to keep looking for different fonts. And as I try fonts, I will also size it bigger until I get the look that I want. I really like this Brittany one. It's really fine, and this is something that I would not be able to replicate by cutting out on the Cricut, so I think it's a fun one to use because it's so delicate. I think printing it on the photo is one of the only ways to get that on there unless I were to handwrite it. And let's be honest, my handwriting definitely does not look that good. There's other ways to enhance your title. You can add effects. So I go up to the top here and just click effects. Lift is one of my favorites. It just kind of darkens around it. You can increase the intensity or decrease it, but just makes it pop out from the background a little bit more. And I think I am going to use that effect on my title. It's subtle, but I like it. You can also do shadows and hollow and splice and outline. There's so many different things that you can do to make your title look cool. I like this neon one, and I actually debated keeping that, but I'm going to go back to the lift effect. Now, I believe I used Paradise as a title on the last layout that I did with this collection, so I don't want to use it again. I thought maybe I would try Getaway. I think it looks really cool in this font with that big T. And I also like to mix fonts. So I knew I wanted to have 2 words to my title. I like to have one font that's more scripty and one font that's a little bit more simple. I think it looks really good to mix the two. So I'm going to go through the same process as I did before, just kind of scrolling through, trying different ones to find what I like. I'm going to end up going with this Universe Extended. I like the kind of stretched look to it. When you're looking at the fonts, any of the ones that have like the little crown, those are only if you're a subscriber. They won't be included for free. So just keep that in mind if you're using the free version of Canva. Now, I'm running into a little bit of trouble because Blissful Getaway is not working. This, with the way the T is sticking up, if I wanted to use just Getaway, it would be fine. But I kind of wanted it to say Blissful Getaway, and it's just, I don't like any of the versions that I'm trying. So the best thing I can do is change the word getaway, and I thought escape sounded really nice, blissful escape, and that E works perfectly to create this little shelf, this little spot for me to add the word blissful. I like for my words to fit in together so that they don't look awkward beside each other, and if that means I need to change up my title, then so be it. But now I just need to size it, and I'm just pulling on them until I get the right size that fills up enough of that space, and I'm happy with how it looks. If you want to add journaling, now would be the time to do that, but I am just going to download this. I was going to do a JPEG, but the PNG I think is a higher quality. It says best for complex images, so I decided to export as a PNG since it is a large photo. So I'm just going to download that to my computer and then bring it into my Photos program, which I'm on a Mac, so I'll be using iPhoto. You can see inside the Photo app, there's tons of different sizes that you can print at. I am going to do the US letter size, and you can choose with or without a border. Since I already have my border on there, I selected borderless. And then I quickly had to get my printer back online because it was offline. And then once I had solved that problem, I just go under media and quality. I'm going to put my large 8.5 by 11 paper in my rear photo tray. It feeds really nicely from there, and it's already selected on photo and best quality. Now you can change what kind of photo paper you are printing on, and you might need to depending on the paper. I am printing on my Epson EcoTank 8500, and I love the quality. Now, if you enjoyed what I just showed you, this is very similar to a video I might do as a tip within the Creative Design Team membership. We show all kinds of techniques and tips, fun ways to scrapbook and make cards and work with your photos. We do deep dives into a new topic each month. With a weekly class video, you will get 4 or 5 big classes on the topic. Between the 7 of us, we have a wide variety of styles, and we like to focus on techniques so that you can use your stash or play along with what we're using. I hope you'll come check out the membership and join us for the fun. Now, I thought it'd be nice to use some frames on this one. These are from the Close to My Heart photo frame. I use this thin cut. I love that it has the stitched edging and it has the rounded corners. And I just took some of the Country Woods papers and cut them out. So I had a selection of colors to work with. All of the colors, of course, are in this paper here. This one, I wanted to preserve as much paper as possible, so I used 12 by 12 white cardstock, and then just cut out strips for the sides. Now what I want to do is layer my photos underneath like that, and I will probably need to do some trimming on some of these photos to make it work. And then this one here, I'm actually going to overlap the corner, and then I'll add my embellishments around the edges like that. So you can see it comes in handy that I have an empty spot in that photo. And then these ones over here, I'm going to put down with the rest of these frames. So I'm going to have like a little cluster, or actually a rather large cluster, in the center of this right-hand page with all the frames. Now I think I might angle them a little bit more than that, but you get the kind of general idea. I want them a little bit wonky, not perfectly straight in a grid, so that it looks a little bit more natural. Now, because this paper is a little bit distressed too, I do want to add a little bit more distressing to it. So I'm actually going to rip my edges on these long strips just to add some more texture and kind of rustic feel to it. I haven't stuck these down yet because I'm pretty sure I want to layer some of my embellishments underneath them. I do have my large photos stuck down though, because I think it's going to be pretty much good to go. I ripped this long wood grain piece and I'm just going to tuck it under here. I wanted to bring some of this ripping over onto this side, and I didn't really have any plans of anywhere else to include it. So I wanted to add that there. Don't worry that it's not long enough. I just used a scrap, but I'm going to have embellishments going over this part anyways, so it'll be fine. Now, speaking of embellishments, I'm going to do that step next. So I'm going to use some white cardstock, and I'm going to use some ink. I have Crumb Cake from Stampin', Melon from Close to My Heart, Pool Party, and Early Espresso from Stampin', and Belle from Close to My Heart. So these seem to go really well with these colors. I only have a few Stampin' Up colors, so I'm always subbing in some of my Close to My Heart colors that are close enough. As long as they kind of have the same tone, they work pretty well together. I'm going to go ahead and move this off to the side, and then I'm going to flip this one over so I can use that foamy side of the Versamat, and I can do my stamping on here. So I'm using these stamps here. I know I want the sand dollars and the starfish, 2 different sizes there. Now, if you want to see how to stamp these, cut them out, emboss them kind of as a set, I show that in my other video. For this one, I'm actually going to stamp them separately and then place them into my embossing folder, because I don't need that third size. There's no stamp that coordinates with this third one. I'm just gonna lay them out here, and I'm going to use a variety of colors just to keep things interesting and so I don't end up with too much of one color. Okay, let's start off using some Crumb Cake. I like to open these by turning the little lip where you grab this away from myself, and then I push it in. And the ones that have extra labels that say Crumb Cake, I put them right there so I can see what the color is when it's open, because I'm still learning all of the different colors. I'm not pushing hard, I'm lightly tapping on here. And don't worry if this looks kind of mottled and weird looking, because that's the way the stamp is designed. It's supposed to look all kind of faded and not perfect. I want to use both sizes. And I'm going to stamp more, but I'll just stamp these couple to show you what this will look like. Because I did not perfectly line these up, I cannot die cut them both at the same time. I did that in my other video. If you want to see what that looks like, I'm going to just quickly cut these apart. And then you just need to rotate the die until you find the spot that this goes at. There we go. These little notches here go in those white spaces, so it makes it pretty easy to find the way to line them up. And then I'm just going to washi tape this into place. Now you could do both at the same time if you want to. You just would have to trim a little bit of this excess off. Let's do that right now. The nice thing about the Stampin' Up dies is that they cut very close to the image. There's not a big white border, So that'll make this easier. I'm just gonna rough cut this. You could easily hand cut this if maybe that's faster for you, but I know a lot of people don't like to hand cut. So I'm just gonna show you how I did this. Right, that is all lined up, and then I can run it through my Big Shot. So there you can see that really thin white border. And I'm going to grab my embossing folder and just hold this in behind and line that up. It's super easy to line these up. And then I'm going to take a little bit of washi tape, and while I'm looking through the front, I'm just going to washi tape them inside because I don't want them shifting. And I find without taping them, it's really hard to keep them in the exact spot that you want. Even just getting the folder closed is tricky, so taping them really helps. I'll just close my folder and run this through. Remember to use the setting for 3D embossing folders. These ones are thicker than regular ones. And if you're not sure what sandwich to use, just gently test it out. Don't try and force it through your machine because it can break your machine. So for me with my Big Shot, I have the platform it came with both tabs down. And then I just put a cutting plate over top. And it's tight, but it's not too tight. It still goes through fairly easily. The texture is so beautiful, and it's always better in person, but I think you can really see the depth of that embossing. So pretty, and I think it's definitely going to add a lot to these pages. So I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to create more of these using the other colors that I pulled, and then we will start arranging them on the page. All right, I have a nice little stash of these to use. I used the Melon color from Close to My Heart. This is early Espresso, but second generation. And then the Crumb cake. Both of those are the Stampin' Up colors. And then I used the Belle ink from Close to My Heart to make some little starfish. These ones are not embossed. They are just stamped and die cut, but I love how the stamp is designed so that it like fades out on the middle and then it's darker on the edge, so they look a little bit more dimensional. Now the last thing I want to do is create some of these from the die set, and I thought maybe we should use Pool Party because I haven't used that color yet, and that's one of the other main colors in this pattern paper. So I think I want to do that. I don't have a bunch of cardstock yet in all the Stampin' Up colors, so I think I'm gonna make my own just so I can cut out a few of those. So I'm gonna put out my craft mat and then take some regular white cardstock and my ink pad, and I'm just going to drag it along here. It does not have to be perfect because once I die cut it, it's not gonna matter. All right, so I'm gonna set this aside and let it dry. Now I want to start putting down my embellishments and figuring out where everything is going. I also pulled in some linen thread. This is one of my favorites, and I think it goes really good with the theme or the style of these pages. And then I used these on my last layout that I did with this paper, and I just love them. These are the flat adhesive-backed pearls. I like that they're flatter than other pearls. It kind of like squish down, and they're iridescent. So they kind of look like little water bubbles. They're irregularly shaped, and I love them on my last layout, so I'm going to use them again on this one. For the twine, I think I want to add little kind of like spools of it to my clusters. So let's start creating here. I want to have one over here and one over here. So I think I want to tuck this behind here. I could also tuck it over here, but then I lose a lot of that frame. So let's just try it behind here and see how that looks. Now I'm gonna speed up the video a little bit here because this is where I am just playing, tucking things, moving things around, trying to figure out where I wanna put all these beautifully stamped and die cut pieces. So clustering can take a while, and I wanted you to see my process, but I didn't want you to have to watch it in real time because that might be a little bit slow. So on the left-hand side, I have my 2 clusters, and then over on the other page on the right-hand side here, I want to do 3 main clusters. I think that will balance it out the best. So I kind of have a triangle. I have an odd number, so I have 5 clusters all together, and I think that works out well. You can see I'm repeating elements, I'm repeating colors, and I like having the different sizes because I think it's a little bit more pleasing to look at, to have things that are larger and smaller. Underneath this photo here on the left is where I'm going to put my journaling, so it might look a little bit empty now, but there will be some journaling there. This stamp set is called Captured Happiness from Close to My Heart, and I love all the words in here. They're perfect for scrapbooking. And you can see how I laid the one on the right just on my page. Don't do that on a photo, especially if you like to use pearl kind of finished paper like I do. If you lay your stamp right on your photo, it's going to leave an impression. It's going to leave an outline. I have ruined one too many photos that way, so this time I stopped myself and I grabbed a little piece of wax paper to kind of buffer that so I wasn't leaving behind a print on my photo. Now I'm showing you, I'm just going there with my Barely Art glue, squirting some glue under these and then pressing them into place. And I'm going to work my way around. So I'm going to glue down this first cluster and then I'm going to glue down the photo. When you have a lot of pieces like this, you definitely want to start working from back to front to get everything glued down. I really like the Barely Art glue for this because it has that nice fine tip and I can just kind of put it under my pieces and squirt it where it's needed. I'm not going to show you the full process because it did take some time, but I think you get the general idea. Now, once the right page is down, I'm moving on to the left-hand page, and I decided I wanted to wrap some of that linen thread around here, and I'm just using a little bit of tape to hold it in place. I decided I didn't want to tie it with a bow or anything. I'm just wrapping it around, and I thought tape was the easiest way to hold it in place. Now it's at this point where I'm remembering that I wanted to do little groupings of the linen thread and tuck it under my clusters. So thankfully I did not perfectly stick down all my pieces and I was able to go around and pry things up and then just add a little bit more glue underneath to hold that thread in place. I love the kind of natural texture of this, and also it adds a little bit of messiness or like kind of whimsy to these groupings so they don't look quite so tight and perfect, and just kind of breaks things up with another element. I'm using the glue under the die cuts to help hold those in place, but you can also use little dots like I am here under the loops of the thread to help tack it down so when you're putting it in your page protector, it's not flying all over the place. I decided I wanted a little something on the background, so I'm using Belle ink with a small splatter stamp. This is from an old Close to My Heart one called Perfectly Imperfect Patterns, and I'm doing second generation, so I'm stamping off to get a lighter version of that Belle color and just adding these little splatters around my groupings. I debated ink blending on the base, but really I just didn't want to have to move everything off and do ink blending, and I thought this was an easier way to add another element to those clusters. Now comes the scary part. I'm going to stamp on my photo. Stazon ink is my favorite ink for stamping on photos because it dries quickly and it is meant for stamping on slippery surfaces like ceramic or glass or things like that. You always want to have a Reinker for this and re-ink it before you go to stamp it because it dries out really fast. That's also why you want to keep that clear plastic cover that comes with it. It will help preserve the ink and keep it from drying out. Now I did make a mistake here. You can see I stamped on top of my wax paper. I should have moved that wax paper off because I had a little bit of black specks that went through to the photo. But whatever, I tested out my stamp so many times on scrap paper, and then you just have to go for it. Once it was stamping perfectly, went for it, push down, hold in place, but try not to rock too much. And I was lucky. It turned out perfectly. Now, Stazon, you want to get that off of your stamp. So I have a Stazon cleaner, and then I'm using a baby wipe. You could even also rinse this in the sink if you want to make sure you get all of that ink and all of that stinky remover off of there. It is a solvent ink, so you do need a special remover to get it off. Now, you could always use a stamp positioner if you wanted to make sure you had the best chance of it not sliding, like your stamp not sliding when you go to touch the photo paper, especially if you use like glossy photo paper. It can be a little bit slick, and a stamp positioner can really help with that. I am just going and adding those beautiful pearl accents to all of my clusters. I love the extra shine that they bring, and I am loving how this layout has come together. Now, there was one more step I decided to do after the fact, and that was to take my platinum Stickles. I'm going to squirt a little bit out onto my paintbrush. I would have just used my finger, but because I'd already put my layout together, I decided a brush would be better so I could really get into the details. I'm really kind of rubbing it in. I'm not trying to make like a puddle or make it stand out. I'm trying to like rub it into all of that texture. It gives it this really pretty, it doesn't even really capture the angle that I'm showing you, but it just gives this beautiful sandy looking twinkle to it. And I'm really happy that I added these to my sand dollars and just added a little bit extra shine and bling. You could definitely do it with or without this detail. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you go check out the CDT playlist so you can see what all the other creators have done with their large photos. And if you'd like to see the first layout that I created with this collection, click on that recommended video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.